I was sitting in the corner of the JFK Airport's VIP lounge, a cappuccino cooling beside me, when my phone lit up. A group photo. All of them, Madison, Claire, and Brooke, smiling at the boarding gate, the caption. Off we go. Girls trip. No tag. No mention of me. I blinked at the screen, the hum of distant boarding calls echoing through the glass walls. Outside, the New York skyline shimmered in the winter haze, but inside my chest, a quiet heat built. It wasn't shock, not really. If I was honest, I'd seen the cracks in our friendship long before this moment. The subtle eye rolls when I spoke. The way plans were made in group chats, I somehow wasn't included in. Still leaving me here? That was new. I ran my fingers over the smooth silk of my blouse, feeling its cool luxury against my skin. People underestimated me, they always had. And maybe I'd let them. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching steam curl into the air. If this had been years ago, I might have cried in the bathroom stall, called my mom, and asked what I'd done wrong. But today? Today was different. I opened another app, not to chase them, but to call someone who owed me a favor. A very specific kind of favor. The smell of burnt coffee always takes me back to that afternoon in college. I was 20, sitting at a sticky table in a cramped campus cafe, my laptop open, heart pounding. Across from me, Madison, yes, that Madison, leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Look, Harper, she said, tilting her head in that condescending way she had even back then, it's not personal. We just don't think you're a fit for the trip. Claire and Brooke sat beside her, sipping their lattes like they were watching a TV drama, not participating in my humiliation. A lump rose in my throat, but I forced a smile. A fit? We've been friends since freshman year. Madison shrugged. It's just this trip is expensive, and we don't want you to feel uncomfortable. The implication was clear. I couldn't afford it. And at the time, they were right. I was working 2 part-time jobs just to cover tuition and rent. But the sting wasn't about money. It was about the ease with which they dismissed me, as if my presence, my friendship, was optional. I remember gripping my coffee cup so tightly my knuckles turned white. The ceramic was hot, but not nearly as hot as the humiliation burning in my cheeks. That night, I called my grandmother, Evelyn. She'd raised me after my mom passed, and she had a way of turning pain into lessons. They think they're doing you a favor, baby, she said, her voice warm but firm. But remember this. Never beg for a seat at someone else's table. Build your own, and let them fight for a chair. The next day, she pressed something into my hand before I left for class, her old gold pendant. The back was engraved with a single word, rise. I wore it every day after that. Not for luck. Not even for style. But as a reminder that I didn't need to prove my worth to anyone who couldn't already see it. Within a month, I'd found a paid internship in a small marketing firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I stopped trying to wedge myself into their plans. I stopped asking. And slowly, without them noticing, I began laying the first bricks of a life they'd never imagined I was building. The internship wasn't glamorous. I was 21, filing papers, proofing marketing decks, and fetching coffee for people who didn't remember my name. But I watched. I listened. I learned. My supervisor, a sharp, silver-haired woman named Linda Carrington, noticed how quickly I picked things up. One night, after everyone else had gone home, she caught me in the break room scribbling ad copy ideas on a napkin. You've got an eye for this, she said, tapping my work with her manicured finger. Don't waste it on just making lattes. From that day, Linda became my mentor. She gave me real projects, small ones at first, then bigger. She taught me not just how to create campaigns, but how to read people, anticipate clients' needs, and negotiate without flinching. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried quietly over my keyboard, wondering if I was in over my head. Mornings when I skipped breakfast because rent was due. I still wore the same 3 blouses on rotation, hoping no one noticed. But there were small wins. My first campaign idea that a client actually approved, the first bonus check that didn't just cover bills but left me enough to buy a decent pair of heels. By 23, I'd saved enough to launch my own boutique agency, Harper Lane Creative. I ran it from my tiny studio apartment, with a desk wedged between my bed and the kitchen counter. My first clients were local shops and small businesses who couldn't afford the big agencies. But I treated them like Fortune 500 companies. Word spread. I didn't post my wins on social media. I didn't brag. If someone asked what I'd been up to, I'd smile and say, "Oh, keeping busy." Let them think I was just another girl from Queens trying to get by. In truth, I was building something solid, something mine. I reinvested every spare dollar into better software, better staff, better offices. By 27, Harper Lane Creative had an actual office downtown. Nothing flashy, but with clean white walls, soft lighting, and a view that reminded me daily of where I'd come from. Meanwhile, Madison, Claire, and Brooke were still posting their brunches and beach trips. We crossed paths at weddings and reunions, and they'd ask, "So, what are you doing these days?" in that polite but distracted way. I never gave them more than a sentence. It wasn't that I didn't want them to know. It was that I wanted them to see it when it mattered most, when the timing was mine, not theirs. I kept Evelyn's pendant close. Some days, when deals fell through or clients ghosted me, I'd hold it in my hand, hear her voice, "Build your own table." And I was, brick by brick, contract by contract. Until one day, I realized I wasn't just at the table. I owned the whole damn room. Back in the VIP lounge at JFK, I glanced at the group photo again. Their laughing faces, their over-filtered cappuccinos held high like trophies. Somewhere deep down, the old sting flickered. But over it, there was something stronger, control. I scrolled past their post and opened my contacts. "Ethan," I smiled into the phone. "Tell me the citation's ready. I'm going to Miami tonight." 2 hours later, I was stepping onto the tarmac, the winter wind biting at my cheeks. The private jet gleamed under the floodlights, sleek and perfect, the stairs lined with soft LED strips. The flight attendant greeted me with a warm smile, took my coat, and handed me a glass of champagne so crisp I could hear the bubbles fizz when it touched the crystal. Inside, the world was quiet, leather seats, soft beige walls, a faint trace of cedar in the air. No crying babies, no TSA lines, no seat 34B with someone's elbow in my ribs. We took off just after sunset, the city falling away beneath us, lights scattering like gold dust across black velvet. I stretched my legs, kicked off my heels, and let my mind wander to the moment that was coming. By the time I landed, the jet's wheels kissed the Miami runway with barely a shiver. A car was waiting, black, polished, driver in a sharp suit. We headed straight to the hotel I'd booked days ago, the kind with white marble floors and ocean views framed by floor-to-ceiling glass. I checked in, showered, and changed into a soft ivory dress that skimmed my knees. Effortless, but expensive if you knew where to look. Then I waited. It was just after 5 p.m. when I saw them. Madison first, wheeling her scuffed pink carry-on, sunglasses pushed up onto her head. Claire trailed behind, her tote bag sliding off her shoulder. Brooke was complaining loudly about the chaotic flight. They stopped dead when they saw me in the lobby. "Harper." Madison blinked. "What? How?" I tilted my head, letting a slow smile curve my lips. "Oh, hey. Long flight." Brooke glanced at Claire, then at me. "Wait, did you get an earlier one?" I sipped my iced tea, the condensation cool against my fingers. "Something like that." They stood there, still catching up to the fact that I was already here, hair perfect, makeup fresh, while they looked travel-worn and frazzled. "Your room is here?" Madison asked, her voice catching just slightly. "Penthouse suite," I said casually, as if we were talking about the weather. "It has a view you wouldn't believe." Silence. Then the faintest, awkward laugh from Claire. I didn't fill the space. I let them look at the designer luggage by my side, at the hotel staff who greeted me by name, at the ease with which I stood there, entirely unbothered. Madison finally spoke. "So, you've been doing well." I met her gaze, steady. "Better than well." Their eyes darted to one another, as if trying to piece together the years I'd kept to myself. I didn't owe them an explanation, but I gave them just enough to make it sting. "I run my own agency now. Clients in 3 countries. offices in 2 cities. We just closed our biggest deal last month. I smiled faintly. Business class felt too cramped for this trip. The truth landed heavy between us, not because of the money, but because of the power shift. The girl they'd once left behind had arrived first, on her own terms, with no need for their approval. We sat at a corner table in the hotel lounge later that evening, the ocean breeze drifting through the open windows. They'd asked if we could catch up, which was their way of saying, "Please explain yourself." I stirred my drink slowly, watching the ice cubes clink against the glass. "So," I said lightly, "what made you leave without me?" Claire shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't, Harper, it wasn't personal." Brooke jumped in. "We just thought maybe you were busy. You've been so low-key online." I raised a brow. Low-key online doesn't mean low-key in life. Madison crossed her arms. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. "You did. But it's not the first time, is it?" Their eyes flickered. They remembered. The coffee shop. The years of little slights. "Here's the thing," I said, voice steady. "I don't need your apologies. But if we're going to keep any kind of friendship, there are conditions." Madison's mouth twitched. "Conditions?" "Yes," I said. 1. No more exclusion games. If you want me in your life, you don't get to decide when I'm worthy of being included. 2. Drop the passive-aggressive comments. I've worked too hard to sit through those. And 3. I paused, letting them lean in. If you can't genuinely be happy for me, then we part ways here. No hard feelings, just clean breaks. Claire swallowed hard. "That's fair." Brooke looked down at her drink. "I didn't realize we made you feel like that." I smiled, not unkindly. "You didn't make me feel that way. You showed me who you were, and I finally believed you. The difference now is I get to choose who I let close." I could see them processing the shift in the dynamic. I wasn't the girl at the edge of the group anymore. I was the one with the power to let them in or keep them out. Madison finally said, "We can do better." It was quiet, but it sounded like she meant it. "Then prove it," I replied. "Friendship isn't about convenience. It's about showing up, even when it's not fun, even when it's not easy." No one argued. When we stood to leave, I hugged them, but it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't me clinging to a place in their world. It was me allowing them into mine with limits. Some part of me knew not all of them would follow through. And that was okay. Because now, my table was already full. That night, I stood barefoot on the balcony of my penthouse suite, the Miami skyline glittering like scattered jewels. The ocean stretched dark and endless, waves breaking in soft, steady rhythm below. Inside, the remnants of the evening still lingered, the half-empty wine glass on the table, my heels kicked off by the couch. I reached into the drawer of the nightstand and took out my grandmother's pendant. "Rise." The engraving caught the light from the city, the gold warm against my fingers. I thought about that day in the cafe years ago, the sting of being dismissed, the way my hands had trembled around a cheap coffee cup, how I'd swallowed the humiliation and turned it into fuel. Evelyn had been right. You can't spend your life begging for a seat at someone else's table. The real freedom comes when you build your own and choose carefully who gets a chair. Earlier, Madison, Claire, and Brooke had promised to do better. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. Either way, I wasn't waiting. My life wasn't on hold for anyone anymore. I set the pendant down on the nightstand, right beside the room keycard and my open laptop. Tomorrow's meetings were already lined up, clients in London, New York, and LA. My schedule was full, my future brighter than the skyline in front of me. A soft breeze swept in from the ocean, brushing against my skin like a quiet affirmation. I breathed it in, feeling the weight of the past lift just a little more. They'd left me at the airport, but I'd left behind the need for their approval. I picked up my wine glass, letting the stem rest between my fingers, and whispered to the night, more to myself than anyone else. They left me at the airport. I left them in the past and flew higher than they ever imagined.